First of all, we are on Exodus chapter 16. If you turn in your Bible to Exodus chapter 16. And everybody in the teenage class, stay out here. So we're going to cover everything we would have covered in there. But if you would please turn to Exodus chapter 16. A couple of preliminary remarks about this chapter that I'd like to make. Definitions. We're going to go over some definitions of some words we're going to talk about here. The word manna first appears now in Exodus chapter 16. And the definition of manna it's nutritional. From everything I've studied and read about it, and I've read several different opinions about manna, it is a bread-like substance from heaven, appearing like flakes of frost on the ground. It was white. It tasted like, it was white, it tasted like honey wafers. And by the way, it was nutritional. It also had an oil taste. It tasted like honey wafers. It could be cooked. It was a nutritional Dunkin' Donut, okay? So they could eat it for every meal that they had, and everyone was to gather 2 quarts for each person. So, you know, I love to eat a Dunkin' Donut, and if you step in there when they say, that red sign is torturous when you go by it and you pull in there. Of course, I do it for my grandchildren, I don't do it for me. But when I'm in there and I smell that, I think, boy, that is just really good. But this was nutritional for the Jewish people. But I want to go over some other, that's manna. That's what manna was. Now, by the way, for them to harvest manna, they just about had to get on their hands and knees and harvest it. Notice this. God didn't just give it to them in their oven. He didn't just make it appear in a way that it was all in loaves or anything like that. They had to do some work for it. They had to get down on their knees and harvest this manna, and it had the appearance of coriander. Coriander is another word we're going to talk about. A plant with a pearl-like seed. Now, 2 quarts was for each individual, and they couldn't carry the manna forward. You know, in the United States, there's always somebody going to figure out a way to make a living or make a profit in a capitalistic society doing something for money. And I don't know if this is one of the reasons God had the manna to last only one day, but one of the reasons I think he did is that he didn't want any couple of Israelites get together and say, hey, we'll harvest it, and then we'll sell it to you, and then you can eat it. He didn't want people having to go to a vendor and buy the manna. You had to go get the manna yourself. You had to harvest it yourself. And what do we know happened to the manna overnight? Here's exactly what the Bible tells us in Exodus 16. It would rot and get worms in it if you had any leftover manna. So by the next day, it would be rotten and you would get worms in it if you had any leftover manna. So it was to be harvested and eaten that day, except for one day. God's perfection, God's wisdom. On the 6th day, they were to gather 2 helpings of an extra portion of manna. Because on the Sabbath, they were supposed to not do any work and not recognize the Sabbath. And it didn't spoil. So how perfect was that of God to do that for them? And I've defined coriander. There's a word in Exodus chapter 16 called omer. And omer is an ancient Israelite unit of measurement. It was primarily used for grains and dry commodities. It was equivalent to 1/10 of an ephah, which is a larger unit of measurement. Now, how does that translate? An omer is about 6/10 of a gallon, or 2.3 liters, or about 2.5 dry quarts. That's what an omer is. It's a unit of measurement. And we're going to read Exodus 16, but I'm going to go over the definitions first. And the bird that was supplied to the Israelites was quail. Now, I don't know that quail would be any different than I used to hunt with dogs when I was a young boy and teenager, and even into my early 20s. There are no quail around here anymore. I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if it's fire ants, if it's foxes, if it was, I don't know what happened to quail in Georgia, but if you're gonna hunt quail now, you gotta go to a hunt reserve, which almost feels like cheating, because you go and you have dogs and you have your gun, and they set the birds out now. Now they set them out, and the dog steps into the cubby gets up. But these birds are fat, they can't hardly fly. So it feels like, it's not quite the sport it used to be. But quail is a bird that goes and travels in cubbies. Any of you remember bird, Rick, I know you do, bird hunting. Remember big cubbies of quail? We used to have them all over the place. Oh, plentiful. And quail hunting to me is one of the fairest sports, because you got your dogs, you got your quail, and when they get up, they have a shot. They have a chance of getting away. So you got to shoot them. And if they're good, smart birds, they'll get going. And if you're not a good shot, you won't get them. We always say give a quail we kill. But quail is a bird that flocks together, and quails nest on the ground, which is kind of an unusual thing. I think that's one of the reasons we don't have quail anymore, is when they cubby, they don't cubby in the trees. I mean, after we got the cubby, we got singles, and they were laying in a tree sometimes. But quail was a flock of birds, and by the way, raise your hand if you've eaten quail before. It's good. It's really good. And there's a lot of different ways to prepare quail. God provided quail as food for the Israelites. Another word, now let me talk a little bit about kind of an overview. Where are we in Exodus chapter 16? This is lesson 64. I had a phrase I wrote down, "O ye of little faith." Think about the setting here now. Moses has already, through God, with God has parted the Red Sea, and they've seen it. God has caused the Red Sea to flow back over and kill the Egyptian army. They're not there anymore. The Egyptian army is gone. Over 250,000 troops, counting their chariots, counting their leaders. It is gone. Now, if you are an Israelite that has left bondage after 430 years, and you have witnessed, by the way, I've read different accounts of the depth of the Red Sea that was parted. And the accounts I've read where they crossed was anywhere from 300 feet deep, which is the length of a football field, up to 900 feet deep, which is 3 football fields. Can you imagine walking through a corridor of water on dry land through the Red Sea with both sides of you, 300 to 900 feet of water. Held back, it just held back, not with walls, not with wood, not with a dam. Just visibly pulled back and up and away. Now these are things that the Israelite people had already seen. They had seen this when they reached the other side of the Red Sea. They had seen this when the floating bodies of the Egyptian army were all over the place and the water had caved in on them. So this is what they had seen. This is what they had witnessed. Now this is in addition to the plagues that God visited upon the Egyptians in order to provoke Pharaoh to release the Israelites from bondage. But the Israelites at that time were worried about the next thing. And what was the next? What about food, Moses? What about food? What about our food? Have you led us out into the desert, into the wilderness, only to starve to death? Did Moses ever call, "O ye of little faith"? Everything you've seen, everything God has done for you, and releasing you and freeing you, and you've seen what He's done with the Red Sea, you've seen what He's done with the plagues, you've seen what He's done with the destruction of the Egyptian army, and you are concerned about whether or not God is going to feed you. Well, feed them He did. And it was through the substance called manna. And with that said, we are in chapter 16 that has 36 verses. And I would like for us to read this together. If you would open up your Bibles. I'll take the first 5 verses and then I'll ask others to look. Or let me just go there. David, would you read? first 5 or 6 verses. Chapter 16 of Exodus.
Verses 1 through 5.
Yeah, you could.
And they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into this wilderness, to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate, that I may prove them whether they will walk in my law or no. And
Okay.
it shall
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily.
This is God's direct response to their direct request, and that they were worried about whether the next meal was going to come from, where their food was going to come from. And God answered that prayer by raining bread from heaven down to them in the form of what we know as manna. By the way, manna, if you read further ahead, manna, you remember when manna ended? You know, there is no, what?
I think it's in Joshua.
Yeah, and it ended when they were entering into the promised land. So this food was provided for 40 years. This food was provided to them. Nutritionally enough to sustain them, to nourish them, to keep them alive, to keep them moving, along with the quail. And then when they were entering into the promised land, Canaan, it ended. That was it. That was the end of it. So through 5 verses, we now see that despite what they've already seen, by the way, I'd like to try to look at both sides of everything. I try to get in the mind of an Israeli slave, because they were slaves, is what they were to Egypt. They were slaves. And they had been in bondage for 430 years. Do you think they really ever had much joy? Probably not a lot. 430 years in bondage, that's a long time. That is so many generations. I can't even count. It's older than the United States of America. We're like 250 years old. So when you start going back and thinking about how the people of Israel had only seen despair, had only known work, and they had kind of got used to it. You ever think about the fact you can get used to almost anything? When you start something that's really difficult, and for them it was difficult 30 years earlier, but from a generational standpoint, day in, day out, year in, year out, they had gotten kind of used to it. My very first jury trial, when I stepped into the courtroom, it was full of people, and I had a client, and I had a judge, and I had another lawyer trying to beat my brains out, and I had jurors everywhere. I was so scared. It was, I think, the most petrifying. I'd rather be in a football game, Chris. I tried to talk Chris into being in a theater show this spring. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, well, it's all mapped out, planned out. You know your lines, you deliver your lines, you hit your spot, you're in the light, and you get off stage. In football, you might get clocked, blindsided, hurt, maimed, injured. You may score a touchdown, you may not. You may miss the block, you may miss the tackle. And you're doing that in front of 10,000 people. Chris said, I'd rather do that. Okay? And I'm like, how? In a theater, it's 300 people. On the football field, it's 10,000, and it's on field. Chris said, I don't care. I'd rather be on the football field. Well, you remember your first game that you played in as a freshman. Rachel very well remembers the first time in competition. Shannon may go far enough back. She remembers her first competition as a coach, as a cheerleader. It's just that feeling you had inside you of trepidation, of worry, of concern. Well, you get used to it, don't you? So anyway, after that first trial, I just stayed scared the whole trial. I won it too, by the way. I'm always happy to say that. But it got easier, not from the standpoint of preparation, but what got easier is I could digest being in a courtroom, being with in front of a judge, being in front of a juror, a lawyer on the inside, and it got to be okay. The bailiffs, the courtroom reporters, and everybody in the room. Well, you get used to it, right? The competition always prepares you. Well, let's talk about the Israelites, and this is what I'm comparing it to when I mentioned Chris and Shannon and Rachel. They got used to being in bondage. They were used to it. So when Moses, through God, takes them out of Egypt, and they see these miracles, they see it. They're witnessing it. The parting of the Red Sea, the destruction of the Egyptian army. They're still worried, David, about the food. What about our food? What are we going to do about food? Well, God answers that question. So, could somebody read 6 through 10, please?
Then Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, that evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your complaints against the Lord. For what are we, that you complain against us? Also Moses said, this shall be seen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to the full. For the Lord hears your complaint which you make against him. And what are we? Your complaints are not against us, but against the Lord. You want me to go ahead and go further?
Please.
Then Moses spoke to Aaron, say to all the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your complaints. Now it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appears in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard complaints of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God.
God knew what they needed. God knew exactly what they needed. They needed food. And they started complaining before God could answer that bell. And God provided. He knew that they were fearful. He knew that they had seen a lot of miracles. They'd been hit with a lot. But he knew that they needed food, and he provided the food. He didn't say, well, just because you have so little faith, I'm not going to provide you food. He did provide food. He provided to them. By the way, if you notice something back in verse 2, the people were complaining against Moses and Aaron. But who were they really complaining against? They were complaining against God. They were complaining against God. Moses and Aaron were the vehicles by which God carried out his message, or he used them to communicate and to carry out the message. But when they were complaining against Moses, they were complaining against God. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So we go on with these verses, and Brother Spotty, did you go through 10 or 11 or 12?
I went through 12.
Okay, all right. Somebody give me 13 through 18. 13 through 18.
And it came to pass that at the evening the quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew laid mud about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness, there was in small round things as small as the roar, just as on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for this waste not what it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather it every man according to his eating, and an omer for every man according to the number of his persons. Take every man for that which are in his tent. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating.
Okay, we see that it is we see the word manna mentioned for the first time in verse 15. And manna, by definition, I looked up, actually says that it was called manna by the Israelites because they didn't know what it was. But they knew that it was bread which the Lord had given them to eat, and that they could prepare it in different ways and cook it. And that's what they lived on. That's what they lived on. Now, by the way, we're not getting to the point that the Israelite people had made decisions that caused them to wander for 40 years. We're still fairly early on in the process of them. Yes,
I was going to say manna literally means what is it?
Yes, it does.
The American Standard,
Yep.
translates it just as that, instead of man, it translates it literally, what is it?
You hear David, I looked that up, and David, first of all, you're 100% right. But when I read that definition, I thought, that's not what man is. Man is food that was provided to the Israelites. But no, when they call it man, the literal definition is, it is a,
What is it?
by the way, I'll tell you something, preparing a lesson, I don't mind reading what theologians have to say. You have, okay, I'll just say it this way. If you read, a theologian supposedly knows their Bible backward, forward.
Eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Say it again?
Eat the meat, spit out the bones.
Yeah.
You read whatever a commentator says.
Listen, well said. Can I use that next time I have to?
Sure, it's not original for me.
Yeah, it's funny. By the way, one of the verses we're going to talk about in the lesson is Ecclesiastes 1:9. You said it wasn't original to you. Ecclesiastes 1:9 says, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. That's Ecclesiastes 1:9, and that's true. So, I don't know if there is such thing as original thought anymore. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. But there's nothing new under the sun, save Ecclesiastes. By the way, it's King Solomon saying that. So anyway, I read what some of the theologians say, and to my shock and amazement, now these people that spend their careers in education and PhDs and, doctor this and then doctor that, they don't even believe Moses was a real person. What? No, I'm not talking about the Israelites. I'm talking about a well-versed theologian will tell you that, I don't know if it's really true or not. I had a theologian on the witness stand one time, and he was very proud of his religious degrees, and he could quote the Bible. He could quote the Bible. Quote the Bible better than me. But then when I was cross-examining him, I said, so I guess you studied all about Noah and the flood. Yeah, you know how it happened, what happened. Yeah. Well, was Noah a real person? He said, which way? Well, there are different ways of thinking about that. There's a line of thinking that says he's a mythological person that is created to let. I said, whoa. You don't believe Noah was a real person? He didn't. I said, well, Christians do. So anyway, he was done as an expert witness. Anyway, so the point being of this part of the conversation is that the manna, by definition, what is it? We know what it is. We know what it did in providing nutrients. We talked about the definition. So, once again, God answered the needs of the people. By the way, have you ever thought about the sheer magnitude of moving some 2 billion people? It wasn't 100 people. It wasn't us crossing the Red Sea and crossing the desert and, there's 150, 80, 100 people here. 2 million. John, how much is San Francisco? 100,000? Is it 100? Yeah. But filled up Sanford Stadium on football Saturday is 20 times that number. And Moses was responsible for him. God was responsible for him. God had taken him out of Egypt to set them free, put them in the land of Canaan. And there were young people, there were mouths to feed, there was water to have, there was deserts to cross, there was help to look after, there were wild animals, there was other fighting nations in different areas around them, and God was responsible. You ever think about the burden Moses must have had at the time? How many times, by the way, how many times do you think Moses went to God in prayer or had his meeting with God, talked to God? Probably happened all the time. Just the magnitude of the responsibility of Moses. Whoa. It was hard enough for me being in charge of 4 kids. 2 million? Bunch of kids, 2 million. Always trying, you just try to keep them alive. About that little. Keep them alive, okay? You may have been trying to do other things. I want them to stay alive. But Moses wanted to keep them alive. He wanted to take care of them. He wanted to protect them. And God did. God kept that Egyptian army at bay and killed them all, and got them a place to cross. They witnessed all this. And here we're talking in Exodus 16, God provided food through manna and through quails. Greg, how far did you get just in reading?
18.
Okay. Can somebody read 19 through 26? And 19 through 26.
And Moses said, let no man leave out of it till the morning. Leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was worked with them.
Hold on, Chad, hold that thought for a second. Okay, do you realize what's going on right here? God had already told them, just like we tell a child, that stove is hot. Have y'all been through this already? The stove's hot. Don't touch the stove. What do they have to do? Touch the stove! You know, Brenda was always in charge of a lot of little kids. Oh, Brenda. Oh, the magnitude of your worry and concern every single day, and you just wanted to keep them safe, and you were charged with the further duty of educating them. How many times do you have to, don't touch the stove, or parenthetically, whatever it was, don't climb that high with monkey bars. Don't run across that asphalt pavement. Don't go fast down those stairs. And then they have to do it, don't they? Well, look at what the Israeli people did. The Israelites, they were told, manna good one day, manna not good 2 days, manna ruined, manna get worms, manna stinks. Well, you always have some brilliant person say, well, I don't really know if God's right about this or not. I think I'm going to get a 5-day supply, so I don't have to go out and gather every day on my hands and knees, okay? Because we know best, right? Don't we know best? Not God, we know best. So they got out there to gather the manna, and somebody had the right idea to gather 3 or 4 or 5, however many days of manna that they did. And they woke up the next day. What's that odor? It stunk, and it had worms in it, okay? Now that's a pretty nasty picture, okay? Put it this way, they weren't going to eat it. And then look at the end of verse 20, Chad just read it. And Moses was wroth with them. What does that mean?
Furious.
He was livid, huh? You know, he was livid. Moses was furious. Moses knew what God had done. Moses knew what the rules were. It's like when the first time my granddaughter, don't touch that pot, don't touch that stove, it's hot. And, I turn my back, and probably can turn you back 5 seconds. God can turn us back 5 seconds, and here they are griping about it not lasting more than 1 day. I heard a scream. I mean, she was playing around the stove anyway. I was like, no, not good. Hot, burn, wait. I got on something else, and sure enough, it wasn't bad enough to leave a scar, it was on her finger. But I can tell you this, she won't touch the stove anymore. Why did she listen to your old grandpa? Pops, huh? Why did they listen to God? We didn't listen to him. He said it's going to last 1 day. And after that, it's going to bread worms and stink. Well, they listened to him after that. Chad, sorry, go ahead.
And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. And when the sun waxed hot, it melted. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for 1 man, and all the rulers of the congregation came upon Moses. And he said unto them, that is that which the Lord hath said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and see that ye will see it, and that which remaineth over lay up for you, to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein.
Think about this a minute. So once on the 6th day, and it shows you God's majesty, God's perfection, God's glory, God's greatness, God's wisdom, God's love. Because on the 6th day, he said, gather double dose, and it's not going to stink on the 7th day. You're going to eat it, it's going to be fine. And it happened just like God said it would. another great miracle given by God to the people.
Well, Bill, what does the measurement omer's equivalent to today? Do you have that?
You
Is
mean-
it a basket or what is it?
Okay. I just so happen to have it. An omer is an ancient Israelite unit of measurement. It's a dry measure, primarily used for grains and dry commodities. It's the equivalent to 1/2 of an ephah. Now, what is that? But here's what it is. It is a 6/10 of a gallon. It is 2.3 liters, or it's 2.5 dry quarts. Like we have a quart container, 2.5 dry quarts. And it was for, that was for your portion or the food that you needed for the day. But then on the 6th day, they said gather double dose, and it's not gonna ruin. But if you do it the first 6 days, it's gonna ruin. So an omer was their unit of measurement, and it's 2.5 dry quarts. And that's what they had for food. That is what they used for food. And they could do different things with it. Bake it. It had an oil quality to it too, and it tasted like honey wafers. And I've already said what you reminded me of. And it was nutritional too. It was enough, for them to, I know they were eating the same thing, but it was enough to provide them all the nutrition they needed. It was like a multivitamin too. It had everything in it that they needed. And then of course they had the meat with the quail. But on Saturday, they didn't want them to do anything. They were not supposed to work or do anything. So finally, they get the picture after, maybe a week of this or 2 weeks of this. They realize, well, He's going to provide the manna. Now they had to go out and harvest it, and I think God did that on purpose. If you got 2 million people traveling, what is the phrase? An idle mind is the devil's workshop. If you give them work to do out there on their hands and knees gathering manna, you didn't just snap your fingers and gather manna. You had to gather it. It took a little while to gather it. Absent the internet, what else were they going to do all day? Well, they were out there gathering manna and preparing the food. And again, you have to remember, some 2 million people had to be fed, and they were gathering it and putting it together. So it was something for them to do. God didn't just provide it in their cooking stove or their cooking fire. How far did you get, Jed? What'd you get to? 25? Or
24.
what number?
We'll start at 25.
Okay, can somebody read 26 through 32? 26 through 32.
Then Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, and on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Now it happened that some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day.
Think about the fact that even though God had told them, you'll gather double the bread of 2 days, you still have people going out on the 7th day trying to gather manna. And God said, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? In other words, they just, kept doing things. They were childlike, weren't they, in their disobedience? It was just childlike. And that childlike quality caused them to wander 40 years in the wilderness. By the way, how Moses was when all this happened. Moses died at the age of 120. First 40, Pharaoh's court. Second 40, Midian, family, wife, children. Third 40 years in the wilderness, okay? You ever think Moses thought, I'm 85 years old, what are you doing? I'm 85 years old. No. He did his job and did it well, and passed away at the age of 120. Now, I don't think anybody ever lives at 120 anymore, do they? I don't think they do. Anybody know anybody who lived past 100, which is highly unusual. Anyway, so the people, again, disobedient in the fact that we have 2 minutes to go, sorry about that. Let's get through the rest of it. Can somebody read 31 through 36, the rest of the the rest of this chapter, please. 31 to the rest of the chapter.
And the Lord of Israel called the name therefore manna, and it was like corn seed, white, and taste of it was like a wafer made with honey. And Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord commanded. Fill your omer of it, be kept for your generation, that you may see that the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot and put it on full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generation. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years, until they came to a land wherein they did eat manna, until they came into the borders of the land of Canaan. And now in Homer, it is the 10th part of the Ephraim.
Bo, you notice that, you know what 3 things were kept in the Ark of the Covenant?
Aaron's rod that budded, the manna, and then part of the stone, wasn't that the third one?
I'm gonna start excluding you from answering questions. David's right. The 3 things that were in the Ark were the 10 Commandments. Remember, after Moses broke them, they were made again. The tablets were put in the Ark of the Covenant. The second thing was right here. A pot full of omer. An omer was put in a pot, the measurement of full of manna, and it was put up before it was kept in the ark, and it didn't ruin. It didn't have worm and stink. And then the third thing was, you just said it, David. Aaron's rod, which had budded. That was in the Ark of the Covenant. So that was the 3 things that were kept in the Ark of the Covenant. Only 3 things kept in there. And we know how ornate it was. So anyway, let's see. Let me go on a little. I was supposed to ask these questions and didn't. What did God feed the Israelites in the wilderness for 40 years? I mean, we just said it. All right, and let me ask this question. What did the Israelites who went out to gather manna on the 7th day find? When they went out and tried to gather manna, what did they find? Okay. Why did God want the Israelites to keep a jar or an omer of the manna in the Ark of the Covenant? Why did he want them to keep that? To know and remember what God had done for them. Okay, thank you for your attention, attendance, and I always ring a bell, but there's some other pleasant noise out there that Ernie does. I'm not sure. You have that? Like so, Noah, would you go around to the classes and tell them we're done? That bell's done. Good. By the way, we're going to be studying a lesson, kind of an expansion on Moses. I've learned about Moses more than I've known my whole life in this study, and I love this study. It's a great study. So we're going to be further talking about Moses, the characteristics of Moses, his faith, and some other things about Moses.
Yeah, I hate when I can't make